Debt is not just a number, it is a weight that presses on your mind, your heart, and your daily decisions. When you allow it to dominate your thoughts, it grows stronger. The moment you begin to speak defeat over your finances, you give it permission to multiply. But there is a higher authority that speaks over every area of your life. When you read a verse with intention, it is not merely words on a page, it becomes a declaration that shifts your spiritual atmosphere. Debt begins to lose its hold the moment you align your words with promises of provision and freedom. You are creating a boundary between lack and abundance. The verse is more than encouragement, it is power that dismantles fear, worry, and despair. Speaking it aloud reinforces your faith and reminds you that provision is designed, not accidental. Each syllable you utter carries weight and enforces a reality that moves beyond human limitation. The very act of reading it is an act of resistance against financial bondage, a reminder that debt is temporary and your authority to overcome it is permanent. It rewires your mind to think differently about money, scarcity, and the principles of abundance that govern your life. When spoken with faith, the verse becomes a force that confronts and dismantles all the excuses, doubts, and patterns that have kept you under pressure. It is an invisible tool in your hand, one that commands change in the unseen realm before it manifests in the tangible. As you repeat it daily, you are not hoping for miracles. You are activating them. You are claiming what is rightfully yours and refusing to allow fear to dictate your future. Many people underestimate the power of alignment between their words and their faith. Debt continues to grow when your language is negative, when you confess hopelessness or repeat past failures. Speaking the verse aloud is a way to train your mind, body, and spirit to recognize and embrace divine provision. It interrupts the cycles of scarcity and opens doors of opportunity that were previously invisible. As you meditate on the verse, your thoughts begin to shift. You start noticing possibilities, strategies, and resources that were there all along but overlooked because fear clouded your vision. The verse acts as a lens, allowing you to see clearly and act wisely. With each reading, you strengthen your resolve and reinforce the truth that your life is not meant to be enslaved by financial strain. Action follows faith, and your decisions start to reflect your new mindset. Budgeting, planning, and wise stewardship become natural because your mind has been renewed. The fear that once paralyzed you diminishes as confidence grows. Debt no longer intimidates because you understand that your authority over your life surpasses any temporary circumstance. You are no longer a passive participant in your finances, you are an active contender for freedom. Reading the verse consistently brings a deeper understanding of obedience, discipline, and stewardship. It is not just about wishing for freedom, but walking in the principles that create it. Every word spoken aloud is a declaration of your commitment to change, a marker of your faith in action. Generational patterns of debt are interrupted because you refuse to agree with limitation. Your focus moves from what is missing to what is available, from fear to faith, from despair to hope. Gratitude amplifies the power of the verse, making your heart fertile for provision. Over time, repetition cultivates resilience, clarity, and wisdom. You begin to recognize that debt is temporary, not defining. The verse becomes a companion in every financial decision, guiding your actions and stabilizing your thoughts. Step by step, word by word, debt diminishes. Peace replaces panic, strategy replaces confusion, and freedom begins to manifest. Your life transforms, not because the debt disappears instantly, but because your alignment with truth changes your relationship with money. Each reading is a seed planted, and eventually, the harvest of financial freedom is inevitable. The words you speak have power. Your language shapes your reality, especially when it comes to financial challenges. When you focus on lack, fear, or impossibility, you reinforce debt in your life. But when you read a verse that declares freedom, provision, and victory over debt, you are aligning your voice with a higher authority that can change circumstances. Speaking truth aloud rewires your thinking, transforming your mindset from one of limitation to one of possibility. Each time you read the verse intentionally, it becomes more than words. It becomes a spiritual decree that commands your life toward abundance. Debt may feel overwhelming, but the act of declaring promise over your finances begins to dismantle its hold. Your mind starts to accept that scarcity is not your portion. Fear no longer controls your decisions. Your confidence grows because you are reminded that you are not helpless or trapped. You are taking authority over your circumstances. Consistency is key. Reading the verse once may spark hope, but repeated declarations shape your reality. Your faith becomes active, and with action, strategies and opportunities start to emerge. You begin to see ways to reduce obligations, manage resources wisely, and create new streams of provision. The verse acts as a blueprint, not just for belief, but for practical steps. As your words align with divine truth, your heart and mind follow. You start thinking creatively, budgeting intentionally, and prioritizing wisely. The spiritual act of reading the verse ignites practical action. Over time, the debt that once seemed impossible to overcome becomes manageable. Peace replaces anxiety. You are no longer reacting to bills with fear, but responding with faith. This shift in perspective is crucial because freedom begins in the mind before it is visible in reality. Debt often grows silently when negative thoughts are allowed to dominate. You may not even realize how many times you affirm lack in casual conversations or internal dialogue. By intentionally reading the verse, you are interrupting these destructive patterns. You are replacing defeat with hope, worry with assurance, and fear with confidence. Speaking the verse aloud also strengthens your persistence. Obstacles do not vanish immediately, but your renewed mindset enables you to navigate challenges without panic. You become disciplined in your spending and intentional in your decisions. Opportunities that were once overlooked become visible because your mind is tuned to abundance. Generational patterns of financial struggle begin to break because your words no longer agree with limitation. You are setting a new standard for your family and your future. Gratitude amplifies this process. When you read the verse and thank the source for provision before it appears, you activate a principle that attracts resources. The combination of declaration and gratitude rewires your brain, strengthens your faith, and compels action. Over time, what once seemed impossible begins to shift. The numbers in your favor increase, the weight on your heart decreases, and you notice a new rhythm in your financial life. It is not magic, it is alignment. Your words, mindset, and actions converge to dismantle debt. By consistently reading the verse, you cultivate patience, wisdom, and discernment. You no longer fear the statements on a ledger. Instead, you approach your finances with confidence and strategy. Freedom begins to manifest step by step, word by word, as you take authority over your life and refuse to agree with lack. Financial struggle is not always external, it often begins in the mind. The moment you accept scarcity as normal, you reinforce its grip over your life. But when you choose to read a verse with purpose, you are declaring that limitation will no longer define your story. The verse is a tool to shift your focus from what is missing to what is available. It reminds you that provision is intentional and freedom from debt is possible. Each time you speak the words aloud, you are activating faith in a tangible way. You are training your mind to recognize opportunity instead of obstacles. Debt may have been a constant companion, but it does not have authority over your voice or your choices. By aligning your speech with promise, you begin to see practical solutions that were invisible before. Payment plans, additional income streams, disciplined budgeting, all of these become possible when your mindset begins to shift. The verse is not just about hope, it is about power in action. As you declare it consistently, your thoughts begin to change, and your actions naturally follow. Fear loses its ability to paralyze you, and anxiety no longer dictates your decisions. You approach financial obligations with clarity instead of panic. Your confidence grows because your voice now agrees with provision, not lack. This is the moment where belief meets strategy, where the unseen begins to influence the seen. Each reading strengthens your resolve, cultivates discipline, and deepens your understanding of stewardship. The cycle of debt begins to weaken as your words gain authority, and your mind embraces abundance as the new standard. Many people live in a state of agreement with debt without realizing it. They repeatedly confess limitation, focus on bills, and worry about what cannot be changed. Reading this verse interrupts that pattern. It serves as a spiritual reset, reminding you that abundance is your right and lack is not inevitable. The practice of declaration retrains your brain to focus on solutions rather than problems. It builds resilience, equipping you to handle unexpected expenses with calmness and wisdom. Every repetition strengthens your confidence, your discipline, and your perspective. You begin to approach finances with intentionality. Decisions are made with foresight, habits are adjusted for sustainability, and priorities shift from instant gratification to long-term freedom. Generational cycles of financial struggle begin to dissolve because your words no longer agree with limitation. You are breaking patterns not just for yourself, but for the generations that follow. Gratitude becomes a companion to declaration, amplifying its impact. When you read the verse and express thanks for provision yet to come, you activate a principle that draws resources. Over time, this alignment of words, faith, and action reshapes your reality. The numbers that once overwhelmed you start to decrease, and the pressure that weighed on your heart begins to ease. Consistency is essential. Reading the verse once sparks hope, but repeated intentional declaration transforms your life. It cultivates patience, discipline, and clarity in decision-making. You no longer fear debt as an unbeatable force. You approach it with authority and wisdom. Every word spoken aloud is a step toward freedom. Step by step, the weight of financial obligation diminishes. Your mindset, actions, and circumstances begin to converge in a rhythm of abundance. Debt loses its grip because your voice and focus now agree with provision. As you maintain this practice, you realize that freedom was never external. It was cultivated in your mind, heart, and daily choices, guided by the power of consistent declaration and alignment with truth. Faith is not passive, it requires action. One of the most powerful ways to activate faith over financial challenges is through declaration. When you read a verse aloud with intentionality, you are taking your belief out of your mind and putting it into action. Debt often feels like an immovable obstacle because people focus only on what they see, the bills, the notices, the balances. But there is an unseen reality at work. By speaking truth, you create a shift in that unseen realm, which then begins to influence the visible. The verse becomes more than encouragement. It becomes a tool of authority. Each time you read it aloud, you reinforce the truth that lack does not define your life. You are training your mind to recognize opportunity, to act with discipline, and to pursue solutions confidently. Fear, anxiety, and discouragement no longer have the last word because your voice agrees with provision. This is where spiritual practice intersects with practical action. As your mindset begins to align with abundance, your habits, priorities, and decisions start to reflect that same truth. Budgeting becomes easier, decisions become clearer, and strategies to reduce obligations start to appear. Repetition is crucial. Reading the verse once may inspire hope, but repeating it daily strengthens faith, renews confidence, and solidifies a mindset that refuses to surrender to financial pressure. Your words become a declaration of freedom, and that declaration begins to dismantle the grip of debt one step at a time. Each syllable spoken is a seed planted for the harvest of financial relief, and over time, the manifestation of abundance becomes undeniable. Debt often persists because people unconsciously agree with it. They focus on fear, lack, or limitation in conversation and thought, giving it more power than it deserves. Reading this verse interrupts that pattern and introduces a new reality to your mind. You are no longer speaking defeat, you are speaking life and provision. This declaration reshapes your perception and redirects your actions. You begin to notice solutions that were previously invisible, opportunities that were overlooked, and strategies that you might have ignored before. Faith paired with action produces results. Speaking the verse aloud strengthens resilience and sharpens discernment, enabling you to approach financial obligations calmly and strategically rather than with panic or despair. Generational patterns of debt lose influence because your words no longer agree with limitation. Gratitude amplifies this effect. By giving thanks for provision before it arrives, you create a mindset open to receiving, a heart attuned to recognize resources, and a life that is ready for abundance. Step by step, repetition by repetition, your focus shifts from what is lacking to what is possible, and practical solutions begin to align with spiritual declaration. The weight of debt begins to diminish not because the challenges vanish instantly, but because your approach, perspective, and actions have transformed through consistent engagement with the verse. Consistency transforms belief into lifestyle. Daily reading of the verse cultivates discipline, patience, and clarity. You learn to navigate financial challenges with wisdom and authority rather than fear. Every declaration strengthens your confidence and shifts your habits, aligning your life with principles that produce freedom. Debt gradually loses its hold because your thoughts, words, and actions now operate in agreement with provision. As you continue, you recognize that lasting financial freedom is a combination of faith, action, and mindset. The verse is not magic. It is a tool of authority, a catalyst for transformation, and a guide for aligning your decisions with abundance. Step by step, day by day, you see results, proving that declaration backed by faith is a powerful force that dismantles debt and opens the way for financial restoration. Obedience is a crucial part of overcoming debt. Reading a verse aloud is not merely an exercise in hope, it is an act of aligning your actions with divine principles. Many people pray or meditate but fail to follow through with intentional declaration, which limits the effectiveness of their faith. When you consistently speak the verse over your finances, you are stepping into obedience. You are acknowledging that freedom from debt requires more than wishful thinking. It requires participation. The verse is a blueprint guiding your mind, words, and actions toward provision. By declaring it aloud, you are reinforcing your commitment to live in alignment with principles of abundance and discipline. Debt may have been a weight for years, but your obedience activates a process of release. Speaking truth over your life trains your thoughts to recognize solutions and opportunities. It shifts your perspective from scarcity to possibility. Habits begin to change naturally because your heart is now in agreement with provision, not limitation. This practice cultivates wisdom, focus, and clarity, enabling you to make financial decisions confidently rather than reacting out of fear or desperation. Over time, the consistent reading of the verse strengthens your resilience, reshapes your mindset, and positions you to confront obligations strategically. What once seemed overwhelming gradually becomes manageable because your actions are empowered by faith, and your faith is expressed through obedience. Every repetition reinforces the reality that debt does not have the final say in your life. Each word spoken is a seed for transformation, and eventually, the harvest manifests in tangible financial freedom. Debt often persists when people fail to recognize patterns that keep them bound. Generational habits, impulsive spending, and negative thinking reinforce the cycle. By reading the verse aloud, you are actively interrupting those patterns. You are declaring that limitation does not define your story, and you are refusing to agree with scarcity. This intentional declaration trains your mind to focus on provision, to recognize opportunities, and to act with purpose. Faith is strengthened when paired with action. Each time you speak the verse aloud, you build confidence and discipline. You begin to approach your finances strategically, considering long-term solutions rather than quick fixes. Obstacles do not disappear instantly, but your mindset changes, allowing you to handle challenges calmly and effectively. Gratitude enhances this process. When you express thanks for provision before it arrives, you cultivate a mindset receptive to resources and opportunities. The combination of obedience, declaration, and gratitude reshapes your relationship with money, gradually diminishing the power of debt over your life. Consistency is essential to transforming belief into results. Reading the verse daily trains your heart, mind, and spirit to align with provision. Your words influence your thoughts influence your actions, and your actions influence your circumstances. Over time, this alignment reduces stress, increases clarity, and opens doors that were previously hidden. Debt loses its grip not because circumstances change overnight, but because your approach to life transforms through disciplined, obedient practice. The verse becomes a companion in every financial decision, guiding your actions, reinforcing your faith, and gradually producing freedom. Step by step, word by word, you establish authority over your finances, and the weight of debt begins to lift, proving that obedience and consistent declaration are powerful tools in achieving lasting financial restoration. Generational patterns of financial struggle often influence our mindset more than we realize. Many people inherit not just debt, but the belief that scarcity is normal and provision is limited. These beliefs unconsciously shape decisions, behaviors, and reactions to financial challenges. Reading a verse aloud is a way to interrupt these patterns. It is a declaration that your life will no longer be dictated by limitation or past failures. Each time you speak the verse, you are creating a boundary between what has been and what will be. You are telling your mind, your circumstances, and your family line that debt does not have authority over your story. This intentional act of declaration trains your thoughts to focus on abundance rather than lack. It rewires your perspective, enabling you to see opportunities that were previously invisible and to act with wisdom in managing resources.